Okay. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me here to give a little talk, to share a little bit of my experiences at the School of Design Thinking through the last 9 years so far. So who of you, first question, who of you has heard about design thinking? Yauk. I think I gave a talk here 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and there was nearly no person raising the hand, so there's something going on, which is great. The second question to you is, who of you did his or her final thesis at the university or somewhere else in a team? Interesting. So there was kind of a similar number 5 years ago. What I would love to see in 10 years from now, hopefully in 5 years from now, that if you ask that question, that nearly everybody is raising his or her hand, because this is the normal mode. We're in a mode, in an education mode right now, which is very much focusing on the individual power, the individual competition, and we don't need that anymore in the 21st century. This is what we're thinking about, and this is what we are practicing at the School of Design Thinking in Potsdam, which is very close to here, actually 20 minutes by the S-Bahn. We try to get people out of this kind of silo thinking and get them into teams, little teams, collaborate with different disciplines, just work very context-oriented, not just learning something, but learning something valuable and actually doing something. And this is what we are doing since 9 years. I just want to share some of those thinking and why I'm stating so intensively that we have to move forward. So you already were telling me about my history. I'm a professor since 22 years now. So I was running through a traditional education system, the school. Normally, I did the first flying logos for ARD and ZDF, for the German television stations. Lots of years ago, I was personally experiencing digitalization changing my field, which was at the beginning when I studied art and design and visual communication. It was very, very analog. There was no computers involved in the education system, like 30 years ago. But I experienced the moving in of digital technologies through the last years. And so since 9 years, we are focusing on physical collaboration, which is actually the base for virtual collaboration, but you first have to train the people. So what we are doing is highly inspired by the people at Stanford University who came up with design thinking in an education field about 11 years ago. Those are, we see ourselves as a sister institution because Hasso Plattner, the co-founder of SAP, who is the donator at our institute behind it, he's also the investor. It's the guy in the white white shirt. He's also the investor at Stanford 11 years ago. He found out that this thing, what those people were doing, which was at that time completely crazy, getting people out of their boxes, out of their silos, getting together an architect, a medical student, a law student, a business student, a mechanical engineer, put them together in little teams and have them solve complex problems, which they were getting from outside, from industry, from corporations, and so on. And Hasso Plattner, he was so intrigued by that idea, he gave them a lot of money, several million euros, dollars in the United States. And so that gave it a start. And 2 years later, we did the same thing in Germany. And since 9 years, we're doing radically things which I think are very, very important for the education system in the future. And we see ourselves as a little experimental lab where we can try out every crazy idea in the education to find out how to do education right in the 21st century. So what they did, they were picking up different kinds of students. They were just focusing on project work, and they did one very important thing, which I didn't think that is so important, but they did it great. From the very beginning, they were saying no individual grades. And we did the same thing. So we started with no individual grades, not even grading the teams. We were just focusing on the outcome, not on the individual performance and this kind of measurement thing. And we do the same thing here since 9 years. We didn't stop. And I'm actually completely convinced now after 9 years that this was a very, very right step to do. To just step away from this individual measurement thing, which we've been doing since hundreds of years. In the 21st century, we need a different kind of system. So we started with 40 students, now we have 120 students, very small, but they represent about 70 different disciplines, about 60 different universities, about 20 different nations. So you have a kind of a little, very tiny university with all different fields, like medical students, the architects, the art students, the sports students, the theology, philosophy, all those crazy things. We put them together, and they are all those experts, and they work in little teams, 2 semesters, 2 days a week. No curriculum, just project-based, no traditional education. So what we're doing here, what I'm doing here, professors telling all the others, is the right thing. We don't do that anymore. We just have our teaching team, and it's about 30, 35 people, professors and assistants. They're just coaching the teams all the time. Right now, they're doing this. I have the chance to stay here, to be here, because I have 35 people taking care of the students right now at Potsdam with this team node. So this is what we're doing and we are experiencing. And the other thing is no curriculum, but portfolio. So we have a portfolio of projects. Every semester a new one. This is the previous to this semester. You see there are big companies like Bosch. There's energy companies, there are banks, there are public institutions like the state of Brandenburg, startups like SMAC. They're approaching us. They are paying us a lot of money to get the access to one of those teams, one of those mixed teams, and to give them an actual challenge out of their normal daily practice. For example, Bosch was coming to us, and there was Bosch Car Multimedia, the guys who were doing the radios for cars usually. They started thinking of what can we help the interior of self-driving vehicles in the future, self-driving cars. How should they look like? It's not just a radio. No, there must be a highly interesting interactive system in the car. So the students worked for 1 semester to help them to come up with out-of-the-box ideas. The current semester is that portfolio, completely different. So I'm constantly on the run to find interesting challenges, to talk to companies, to institutions, single people, to find out if there is an interesting challenge to collaborate. So this time we have a French company, Valeo, with a similar topic of self-driving cars. So self-driving cars is somehow a very interesting thing. Who of you has a self-driving car? No, I don't own one. But I think in 10 years from now, if I ask a question, nearly everyone is constantly using this kind of things. So we ask ourselves here, or we ask the students, what do you think will be for families a right interior of a self-driving car, and how should that vehicle look like and behave like? The other interesting, there are a lot of interesting things with Technisat, the German satellite dish and satellite remote control and television company. They approached us with the question, what is the control instrument for a smart home in the future? Is it that piece of glass here? Who of you does not have a piece of glass here, this kind of piece of glass? Actually, 5 years ago when I asked that question, there was some people actually raising their hand, because 9 years ago we didn't have those. So but now, is that the control instrument for the smart home, or is it the remote control, which everyone has at home? Who does not have a remote control at home? So all of us. So if you come back home, you start thinking of what is the device to control my lights and the heating and this kind of things. Is it that thing? Is it that thing? I thought it's that thing. But they came out and they made us aware, wow, there are actually 2 devices, and they are spread all over the time. So this is one of the challenges the students are working on. And just to illustrate what we're doing. Lots of partners were approaching us through the last years. And it was actually amazing that at the very beginning, no one was knowing design thinking in Germany. 9 years ago, there was a completely unknown term. Even design thinking was there. But then smaller, larger companies were approaching us. And this is a recent statistics I just got from the internet. Deloitte was doing a study about what is important trends of business. They were asking business people, what are important trends for them? And 2015 they did that study, and there was design thinking was not on their list at all. 2016, it's already in the middle of the top 10 somehow. I found it very interesting. But there was also, this is an indicator for something, but another thing is an indicator because we get approached by a lot of companies after they did the student project. They were saying, we need to get into that mode because we are facing these kind of things. We are facing a growing complexity, and all of us are facing that. Looking at your piece of glass, how many apps do you have to update all the time, every day? And if you don't do that automatically, this is just an indicator of what is going on. And this is a picture which is used, or a graph which is used a lot of times by Singularity University to illustrate the exponential growth, the exponential change in technology. And we started using that as well, saying that we are about here. There were times here through the last 20 years, I would say, where the human capacities were kind of always better than the machines. We started laughing at the robots, the little first automatic lawnmowers and this kind of things. We were struggling around. They were not doing things right. But we are now in times around here where all of a sudden the technology starts to become better and more efficient than every single skill we have as a human. And even the brain power. Look at Deep Blue beating the best chess player. There is an indication that there is something going on, that the machine, the artificial intelligence, is getting smarter and smarter and smarter. And this line, if you continue that line, that will end up with an increase of being more and more aware of the technology moving on. So this is what companies are facing very intensively right now, because their business model starts to change radically through new technologies, through internet technologies, to connecting technologies, and to artificial intelligence, big data, all kind of things. And so we might be stuck in that thing, but we try to help our students to get out of that, not to just say, okay, this is scary. We have no idea how to handle that, but actually to approach that and to say, okay, let's look at that carefully and what can we do? And I try to illustrate what we're doing at Potsdam at the D School at 2 slides. This is one of the slides indicating where is the best inspirational source. We ask ourselves how to approach complex questions and how to solve complex problems and how to come up with innovative ideas. And in Germany, we're looking very much into technology. We are looking at what the research institutions are doing, and then we ask ourselves what is interesting business models at Silicon Valley or in South Korea. So we're doing these trips and lots of management tours and safaris are going through that areas. We are saying the best inspirational source is actually looking at human values and actually being very close to the customer, but we rather say being very close to the humans and trying to find out what are the real needs. And so we send our students out. We use the money, part of the money the companies are giving to us to do intense research all over the planet. So the guys who are doing the research, the guys and the girls doing the team, which is doing the research about Valeo, the car thing, the self-driving car, they will do research here. But Valeo is also interested in Asia, in the Asian market. So we sent them over to China, and they will collaborate with another D school in Beijing with the student team there to find out how is the different cultural approach. So we invest a lot of money to be really close to accompany, let's say, families or business people on their daily trip and to find out what are the needs. And the second, and this is the even more important slide for myself, because this is actually the nicer version of the little sketch I did when I was sitting in the airplane 9 years ago, coming from Stanford, learned a lot from the guys at the D School at Stanford. So I was trying to find it out and to find the 3 core things which I just learned, and it's basically this one. And the first thing is, I pointed it out already, focus on teams. Not focus on the individual creative power, we focus on teams, on diversity. Diversity in any kind. Diversity in gender, of course, diversity in disciplines, diversity in national backgrounds, different personalities, but also handicapped. So we have very good experiences with handicapped students being a part of a team because they're just adding diversity. If you have a wheelchair driver in a team, he or she adds a new perspective. You know, if you have a blind person in the team, adds a new perspective. And it's very valuable to all the students. The second thing is looking at the exponential curve. Linear thinking and doing doesn't work anymore in times of exponential growth, of complexity. Doesn't work anymore. The thing what we all learned, waterfall model, define the outcome, 4 years, define 3 or 4 milestones in between, and just step on, step on, step on, doesn't work anymore. It's too slow, ends up with results way too expensive, and probably completely off the needs of any person. So we are using iterative process. We're actually talking to this, we are training our students to do loops, to do a lot of intense research, be with the people, do a lot of prototypes, generate hundreds, thousands of ideas, select the best ones, do a prototype of it, just build it, try to realize it somehow, make it tangible, make it visible, make it feelable. And this is the 6 steps. The most important thing is here, the little lines, indicating that we allow the people to do this over and over again. Not just 6 steps, and then we are done. No, over and over again. If you have 1 semester of time, we at least encourage our students to do this 4 times, maybe more. They can do it as often as they want. Very, very important. Third thing is the space. If you move away from the individual learning mode to a collaborative learning mode, if you use that procedure, which is activating the full mental power, the left part of the brain, the analytical part, but also the right part of the brain, the creative intuitive part, you need a new space. It doesn't work in a normal lecture hall. It doesn't work in a seminar room. We need a laboratory. We need a kind of space which can breathe, where the teams can expand, can be a little smaller. And this is one of our workspaces here as an example. And you need a lot of visualization. You need a kind of 3-dimensional information space around the students, which helps them to communicate better and to memorize what they were doing. Because they're just there for 2 days a week, not the whole time. So at our place, we actually, 9 years ago, I went to the big furniture companies, I asked them, do you have this kind of tables for 5, 6 students, for 5, 6 people, stand-up tables? We found out standing is better than sitting. You might experience that now after lunch. You get really tired. Standing would help. So we ask our students always to be in a stand-up position, 8 hours, works. But it should be movable. I couldn't find their furniture, so we had to design them. We had to actually develop the furniture, and we just manufactured 8 tables, but now they're spreading all over Europe. We have more than 150 companies using, and institutions using this kind of tables in their conference rooms and changing their environments. Another thing what happened, which we didn't expect, the mode we were putting the students in, this kind of collaborative mode, was generating entrepreneurial spirit. A lot of students were saying, at the end of the semester, hey, I found interesting cooperation partners, and together we were sitting at the bar, we came up with a great idea, and we have the business person there, we have the mechanical engineer, we have the marketing person there, and it's all friends of mine because we collaborated already, so we started a company. We have more than 90 spin-offs and startups just falling out of the program without us doing anything about entrepreneurship. So, and this was, at the beginning, it was kind of scary to see that, because a lot of those are actually offering design thinking training. So they are kind of competitors, but actually we see them now as a very vivid network which helps us to handle the incredible amount of demand we are seeing from the industry. Other thing which was unexpected was that companies started also to build this kind of, I call that the place to fail. These kind of spaces where teams can learn about collaboration, they can learn to to get into a different mode, to collaborate, not to compete, where competition is, if just as a team competition there, as a kind of sportive competition. This is just an excerpt. There are a lot of companies in Germany now starting this kind of labs. SAP, of course, since Hasso Plattner as the person in the back, the donator, and the co-founder of SAP, he was encouraging SAP to use design thinking since about 10 years now, and they have several labs, which we call the App House. DHL has one, the Deutsche Bank has one, Deutsche Telekom, IBM, there are a lot more. All car companies in Germany are running this kind of labs now. And we are helping them. And the demand from those companies was growing so intensively that now we have to train about 3,000 professionals every year. And we set up this kind of course structure. We started with a 3-day course, open course. It works, it's fully booked through the next months. And we do this kind of every month, a 3-day course. We started doing this once a year. So at the beginning, we had just 20 people in the first year. And we never thought of doing that. Now we started a professional track. This is a program 3 times 3 days over a period of 3 months. We started a certification program because we are in Germany. We have to have certificates. Our American friends, they start laughing at us. They say, "Oh, you are Germans, you know. You have to have a certificate at every time." But we had to start it because there were some public institutions having no idea about design thinking, but they offered a certificate. There was a Cologne public institution offering a certificate in design thinking because it's valuable. So we had to do it on our own. And we started a digital transformation and innovation program, all kinds of things. Back to that one here. When I started 2007 with the D School with nothing, there was an empty floor. All of those 3 core things I thought are really new. And so we have to struggle with all of them. But if I would ask you, where do you think we have to struggle most? Is it with the space? Is it with the team, multidisciplinary team, or is it with the process? What would you think? Is there any indication? No? No idea? I was treating it all 3 the same thing. But I found out through the last years, looking at more than 1,000 alumni, looking at more than 5,000 professionals running through the programs, I found that the big problem is the collaboration. Because we are living in a networked world. We're living in a world which is, I just took this cheap picture from the internet to illustrate a networked world. We are all running around with these pieces of glass. We are all hooked up to the internet. You're doing your emails here today. But in the back of our mind, we are structured like this. And I call that, we are in the Brockhaus mode. Brockhaus, most famous encyclopedia in Germany. At every home, this one, at every home. And 2013, the publisher of Brockhaus decided to stop the printing. 200 years of history stopped. So I started using that as a metaphor, as a visual metaphor for things which are disappearing right now. Because we are using always the network version. We don't use that encyclopedia. Who has an encyclopedia still at home? Hey. Wer hat eine Enzyklopädie zu Hause? No, there are not enough Germans here. So, so you're all using the network version of the aggregation of knowledge. Of course, as well as I do. We use our pieces of glass to find things. We do this every time. But I was standing in front of my bookshelf and I see that thing and the level of dust on top. And this whole structure reminded me to something. Whenever I talk to a representative of a company, my first thing is, I ask them, please draw me a picture of your organization. And usually what happens is, think like this. So we have 8 departments, and we have management level 1 and level 2, and we have the board. And I was thinking, this is so similar to the structure of Brockhaus, which is just disappearing. So I started to use that as a metaphor for the paradigm shift we are in, from Brockhaus mode, analog mode, the dividing mode, which we had to use in the last century, to a network mode. And the gray thing, the gray arrow, is maybe design thinking. This is one of the things, one of the tools, one of the tool sets to get out of that old thinking into a new one. And the bad thing is, we just started. We're not very far. I would position myself up here. I'm into that mode now. I try to be in that mode, and I try to train for 9 years. But I was trained to do it like this, in the upper way. So I constantly find myself trapped into this kind of Brockhaus mode. Our students are a little bit further. when they come to our place, they always think we are connected. You know, we are on Facebook, you know, we are LinkedIn, we are on Xing, we are on all those, we have those devices. The truth is, the machines are connected. Their heads are completely in a competitive mode. And this is actually scary. If I look at my 8-year-old little boy, he's in 3rd grade now. When he entered school, he was here. Now he's here, 3rd grade. After 10 years, he was probably here. If we don't change the education system. I started writing a book. I wrote a book which is called Network Thinking, which is actually using that metaphor and using that because I found it was very helpful for me, and it helped also others, these other decision makers, to find themselves and to position themselves. And a friend of mine was adding a very good term. Peter Spiegel, a guy from Berlin who is into social entrepreneurship and social innovation. He was saying, looking at that metaphor, he's saying, Uli, the old way of thinking is the IQ model. We measure the intelligence of a single person, and the outcome is one number. And we do the same thing in schools and universities, a little bit more in detail. Still, if we do this since 100 years. 100 years ago, IQ was invented by some German scientist, and a French one joined, and Stanford did the IQ test and this kind of thing. But what we need now, the new mode, is the WeQ mode. We have to focus on the we qualities. And I was like, wow, where did you find that term? I checked on the internet, couldn't find it. He was saying, I just made it up. You know. And I loved that term so much that together with that guy, with Peter Spiegel, and with the brain researcher, Gerald Hüther, who is also very well known in Germany, and some other people, we started the WeQ Foundation, which is just opened like 10 days ago. We opened a WeQ space right at Brandenburg Gate, to experiment a little space, very similar to what we have in Potsdam. We have 2,500 square meters for students and for professionals, but we have to do something to experiment. And so at Brandenburg Gate, we have this kind of experimental lab now, and I just want to end with that thing again. If you look at this curve, if we stay in the IQ mode, this curve will get really dangerous. But there's a way. If we get in the WeQ mode, we have a chance to adapt to that curve. We build up creative confidence at that point here. This is the moment where we are in Potsdam. We start to generate transformational confidence, joining forces, and we probably end up, and hopefully end up, with collaborative excellence. We are not there yet, but hopefully we get there. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a great day.